So last week, I asked if it was possible to construct a faith story in a tradition as diverse as our own. A tradition that includes atheists, pagans, Christians, and those who are Jewish, Taoish, and Buddhist. The answer was, evidently yes. Here we are, after all. But I think this is worth examining further. Are we actually doing it as well as we hope? How are we doing this? How is it achieved? In our diversity, what binds us as a tradition? I suppose in some respects it's our history that binds us, but the interesting thing about that is for most of us, that history is adopted. It is a chosen history, which means it is as much motivation as it is inheritance. Our history is an expression of our values. Now, this is a tradition that is maintained by our values. And in fact, it is our values, in the end, that bind us. But if we are so diverse, and we are, right? I mean, more than it appears, and more than most of us even imagine, we are a diverse tradition. So how do we come to these values? How do we arrive at their institutionalization? How do we internalize them individually through our corporate engagement? How do we make one from our many? Now the answer, I suppose you could come to it from many different avenues. I'm going to look at it through the lens of our principles because I think it is revealed there. And it's not that the answer to all questions you need to be sieved through our principles, but they're a good place to start. They do ground us in our tradition, and they are in fact a spring of wisdom. However, as is often the case with our principles, we must drink deeply and dig into them if we are to uncover that wisdom. Like any spring, the bulk of the nourishment lies beneath the surface presentation. Now, it's true that the principles are quite agreeable on first glance. But religion and the urge to religion is not, after all, about agreeability. I can promise you that we are not all bound by our agreeability. And that is good. I don't know about you, but I don't want to merely agree with my religion. I don't need a religion that stops at asking me to agree with it as though it were just a reflection of my own reflection. That just feels like me agreeing with myself, followed by an institutional pat on the back for arriving at a rather infantile state of wisdom. No, give me a religion that asks more of me. Give me a religion that affirms my being and then expects more of me because of that affirmation. One that calls me to look closer, to live with integrity, to dive deep, to live reflectively, to challenge me and call me into my best and most realized way of being. That's the religion that I want. And you know what? That's the religion that I've got. And so do you. Our principles are invitations into depth and fidelity. Some of those invitations provide us with the answers to our question today about how we get our unity from our diversity. So go ahead and look at our principles. They're on your service bulletin. Are they on the back, I think, or the inside? Can you, as you look at them, quickly scan them, can you tell me one that would result in our unity through our diversity? Not the ones that specifically honor our diversity necessarily, but the ones that honor our unity. So have a look. Yes, tell me.
The right of conscience and the use of the democratic process within our congregation and in society at large.
Excellent. Any others?
Acceptance of one another and encouragement to spiritual growth in our congregation.
Accepting one another builds unity. Democracy builds unity. What else?
Justice, equity, and compassion in human relations.
So if there's justice, we have a shot at being a unified tradition.
There are three there.
Equity
Respect.
and compassion. That's right. That's our Trinity, right? Anybody else?
The inherent worth and dignity of every person.
John?
The goal of world community.
Let's not leave out number 7.
Let's not. So we've got this chalk throughout our principles, this drive toward unity, and sometimes specifically through diversity. And I promise if you bring any question, including this one, to our principles and sit with them for a little while, you'll find the principles opening new perspectives on themselves and expanding your sense of them, and with them, your sense of yourself. They can be used as meditative tools or, a magic 8-ball, right? You can do that. They are a mandala or a mantra of sorts. And I encourage you to do that. It's actually fun. You can do that with each one for any question. See what they have to say. Be in conversation. So you've mentioned several. The one that really does it for me, and I don't even know if this was said, was the free and responsible search for truth and meaning. For me, the free and responsible search for truth and meaning guides us to the essential. In fact, it is likely, in some ways, unessential itself. It certainly is essential to all the other principles because they get disqualified if they're not responsible. It's a test of sorts. We don't have a creedal test, I suppose, but it would be frowned upon to be an irresponsibly searching for truth and meaning. Being responsible in the search for truth does not permit unfounded whimsy as the basis of faith. It does not permit for myopic smugness. It does not permit us to bury our head in the sand of our previous experiences. It demands an open mind, a responsibly open mind. The responsible search for truth requires me to discover the essentials of our faith and faith in general, of religion. I spend a lot of time in the essentials. I don't know if you all have noticed that, but that's where I tend to be drawn, and then I build back up from there. The responsible search for truth and meaning, in other words, requires that I do what I'm doing right now. So this is where I find our unity. I find it among the essentials, the fundamental aspects of who we are as a tradition. For me, this is the bottom line, and the bottom line is a place that I like to get to. I am a fundamentalist. That's a bit of a joke, but it's also true. It's more true of me than many of those commonly referred to as fundamentalists. They are actually more literalists. The irony of basing a life on taking myths literally will not pass unmarveled at in this congregation. But this is the advantage that we have as Unitarian Universalists. Most traditions find their unity in their particulars, in what is particular about them. And that's fine. We find our unity in the essentials rather than the particulars. We source their particulars to find our essentials. The essentials are the ground of understanding. They reveal the ground. They are revealing and grounding. They provide the greatest depth and the broadest perspective, and from the essential, I feel like there are just more possibilities. It is the place where the many come from. We can see the truth in the many from the perspective of the essential. It is the unified source of our diversity, and the free and responsible search for truth and meaning describes a method for getting there. And that's the second thing that I discovered during reflecting on this topic this week, is that it turns out that when we are seeking to get or to understand how we get unity from our diversity, particularly in Unitarian Universalism, method is key. So the responsible search for truth and meaning is a method for discovering essentials. Coincidentally, from the point of view of the essentials that search delivered me to, I discovered that the search for truth and meaning is not the only principle that we have that's built on method. There are some things that are both revelatory and obvious at the same time. And this week's reflection provided me with that sort of aha, no kidding moment. So, in other words, method is essential to our principles. One of the things about our principles that distinguishes them from creeds, dogma, and even many doctrines is that our principles focus on method, on how to. They describe a set of values, yes, but either explicitly or sometimes rather more heavily implied. They describe a method. Take the inherent worth and dignity of all people, for instance. That is an ontological and anthropological statement. It is a statement about reality and a statement about humans. It is descriptive. It is an observation. But even though it is an observation of what is, it is also aspirational. And in that, it is prescriptive. Because everyone has inherent worth and dignity, everyone should be treated with dignity and worth. You should regard yourself with dignity and worth. Doing that changes you. It changes others, and it changes the world. It is a method. So within our principles, we have methods that apply to two broad categories, as I see it. I'll call them ideological, and personal. So democracy, world community, interconnected web of existence are, for instance, ideological. They are big ideas. They have to do primarily with the big picture. They certainly have personal implications, but they have mostly to do with big systems. They describe how we ought to interface as big systems and with big systems up to and including existence. Democracy is a value and a method. That's fairly obvious to see. But how is the interconnected web of existence a method? So let's do a thing. I'm going to ask you to close your eyes again. I'll walk you through this. I'm not going to lead you anywhere strange. This is what we've already affirmed, okay? So close your eyes. And reflect on the interconnectivity of all existence. Use your imagination and use your senses. Everything is interconnected and interdependent. Every sound wave, every light particle, every person connected. Every breath of every being interconnected. Every cloud and rock interconnected. Every plant, every leaf, you, interdependent and connected. Every being, everything, everyone in this room connected. Things that we cannot sense connected, interdependent. Now, in a moment, when you open your eyes, I want you to try to understand. Bring that understanding into what you see. Everything you see when you open your eyes is interconnected. You will be seen as if through a filter that reveals the connections, or perhaps you will be removing the filter that sees things as disconnected. So put aside your self-consciousness and open your eyes and look around. It is a description and a prescription, an observation and a method. So that was the ideological. On the other hand, acceptance of one another, inherent worth and dignity, the right of conscience and the like, these are more personal, interpersonal. They have to do with how we behave personally and how we engage one another. Our principles are personal and ideological methods and descriptions. They are not something to which you acquiesce, but rather something that resonates with you and calls to you. And whether personal or ideological, whether prescriptive or descriptive, they all address relationships. They apply to relationships between us and between us and our cosmos. And we have a method for describing, housing, keeping, and pursuing those relationships in a very intentional way. And that method is covenant. Indeed, our principles are a covenant between the individual congregations of the Unitarian Universalist Association. We enter into covenant via our principles. And each congregation has their own and our own particular covenant. We make our bond formal and accountable. We make our unity out of diversity formal and accountable by promising to one another how we are going to do things. If our essentials are the seedbed of our unity, our covenant is the outgrowth. It's the fruit. Our covenant, of course, is also methodological. It describes values and couches them as promises. But these promises turn out to be essentially aspirational themselves. And sometimes we do fall short. They are not an achievement. They call us. And when we fall, we look up, and our covenant is there to call us forward. Covenant calls us into integrity through relationship, and it is by integrity and our relationships with ourselves, each other, and the universe that we are both many and one. It is by integrity, because we are essentialists and Methodists, lowercase m, because we are essentialists and methodological, while keeping relationship at the center, that we are both many and one. This phrase appeared to me at the end of the reflection here. Covenant is relationship with integrity, and I like it because it's a play on words. You could read that differently, and it means slightly different things. So you could read it, covenant is relationship with integrity. Your relationship has integrity. Or covenant is relationship with integrity, so that your relationship is with integrity. I said the same thing twice, just differently. Did that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So we are bound by our covenant. We are bound by our essentials. We are bound by our method. Incidentally, next week we will celebrate our diversity in unity as we gather for water communion. So please remember to bring some water from some experience that you've had over the past several months. We will gather through that ritual. We will ritualize our diversity, forming one substance, one water. So, this has a spiritual payoff. And it could be the long game of practicing acceptance of one another and having that work on yourself and the world. That is a powerful path, a powerful spiritual path. That is a long walk. Or you could have some kind of Satori moment and suddenly plug into the interconnected web of all existence and have a transcendent instant or moment and bring back from that mountaintop some message. Someone's been to the mountaintop, got a message now.
Hi guys, I thought I shut it off.
That was right. Yeah, that was it. That was the end. That was. I guess that was my timer. You're done. That was like the gong show moment. It's okay. Tell them we all said hello. So it does have a spiritual payoff, and that path is up to you. But you've got the methods in front of you. You've got your magic 8-ball of the principles that you could take questions to, that can shape you, guide you, call to you. You've got the aspirational covenant of this church and the Unitarian Universalist Association. So we have these ways to achieve our essentials and to discover our unity, even though we are a diversely gathered people.